but found I was good at it and found I was able to help a lot of people, especially when I was doing it with Bound Angels. That being said, I've got a couple announcements to make before I get started with your questions, which I'm going to try to get to as many of them as I can, but I will ask you, please, that if you ask a question, put a question mark in front of it so I know it's a question. So I see some of you are putting questions in already, and I can't get through all of them because there will end up being hundreds of people in here with hundreds of questions. So I ask you to please put question mark, maybe 3 question marks right in front of your question so I'll know to get to it as a question, because oftentimes people get in here, they know each other, they start chatting with each other, which I think is fine. I love that. But I won't know it's a question directed at me unless you put 3 question marks in front of your question, and then I will try to get to all of them. If you do ask a question, be aware that I will do my best to get to it. If you make it a very long question, if for some reason YouTube kind of blocks it out, you need to keep the question relatively short so I can get to it. August 1st, that's a week from, I believe it's a week from today. Yes, it's a week from today. I've got a week from tomorrow, sorry. I've got a big announcement coming. So I'm just starting to tease it now. It's a new program that I think everybody's going to love. It's going to be really good for a lot of people. It might not be for everybody, but it's going to be a great, great program. So that's coming. Keep your eyes peeled on my social media here on YouTube, Facebook, and everywhere for that announcement. It's a great, great thing. I've been working on it for altogether about 10 plus years. But recently I've spent the last, I think I've logged over 2,000 hours in trying to get this program up. Last thing I want to address before I get to your questions is why am I doing fewer lives and fewer podcasts? And that's a really important topic. And the reason for that is, as of late, I see so many new podcasts popping up all over the place. Everybody's doing a podcast. Everybody with a microphone has a podcast. And even people who don't have microphones have podcasts. And I think it's getting to the point where there's just way too much content out there. And I think people get hooked into it. I see it with myself. I've actually limited myself on how much time I spend on my phone, how much time I spend in front of the computer, because I want to live my life. And I want you guys to live your lives. And for me to just do a podcast every single week and start talking about things or interviewing just totally irrelevant people, I don't think lends anything to the conversation. So from now on, I will only do podcasts when I have a really interesting guest that I want to talk to. And there are plenty of them. And I have talked to many of them. I'm right now, I will do a podcast this next week. That will be my 100th podcast, 100 podcast. That's a lot of content, right? That's a lot of content. And I don't want to waste anyone's time with sitting through a podcast that I'm just rambling on. And I think that's BS. I think it's a waste of your life. Take your dog, go for a walk, take your husband or wife, do something fun with them, go to dinner with them, go do this face-to-face with them. Spend less time on social media and more time living your lives. That's really the message I want to give you. And spend more time training your dog than actually reading about training your dog. Just go and do it. I think it's really, really important. So based on that, like I said, I will do less podcasts, but only interesting ones, less content, but only significant content that I think will lend to the conversation. And if you want to spin your wheels and watch all these other podcasts and vlogging and all that stuff, then go ahead. But I will warn you, as I get older, I start to value time more. And I grew up in a time when we didn't have social media, and I'm grateful for that because it didn't waste my time. Now, I've noticed in the last few years I've wasted a lot of time on social media, and I'm vying to change that. I'm vowing to myself to change that, I should say. So I kind of hope I can inspire you to do that by delivering good content when it's necessary that's related to the conversation. And other than that, just be out and train your dogs. You can always check in with me. You know, the content always lives on YouTube. So, all right, let's see what you got. I'm also using I've had some serious technical challenges this last week. My main RAID array hard drive went out, and it was just a power supply. Thank God. I fought with Western Digital, who makes G-RAID, G technology stuff, which is a great product, by the way. Their tech support is not as great as you would want it to be. It took them a week to ship out a drive that they could have shipped out overnight. But anyway, it's back. I'm backing everything up. I'm not the most computer savvy guy, but I do love my computer. So anyway, hello to everybody all over the world. I'm going to go through and try to find all the questions. If you asked a question before, Kristen, I know you got a lot of questions up there. I'm seeing Kristen, Johnson, I'm sorry, your questions are just going on and on and on. This is really a quick question thing. I can't address long questions. I'm sorry, you've got like 9 different questions. So I'm going to get to the ones that start with a question mark. And honestly, if you keep asking questions, if it becomes like a spam thing, one of the moderators is going to end up throwing you out. So I'm asking you, please don't spam the questions. Ask a quick question. That's what we're here for, and that's what we're going to get to. So let's go. Nick Vidmar, Oscar jumps when meeting people. I correct him when he does it and not allow him to meet unless all 4 legs are on the ground. I tell people also not to engage with him. What else can I do? And that's really all you can do. Nick, put the question up there, because you can't expect, you can't do much more. I mean, you want to correct him, but I would teach him sit, and the minute somebody steps up, I would always tell people to ignore the dog. For the first few weeks, nobody talks to the dog. So if the dog thinks that they're not going to meet the person, they're going to be less likely to interact with them, right? You can give them some cookies or some praise or something when he's sitting there and try to build some duration into that. But that's the only way that's really going to work. So let's see here. I'm only looking for question marks. Kristen, you're really on your way to getting spammed because you got way too many questions up there. I'm looking only for question marks. Haven't seen any question marks. Here we go. Maligator Nals. My female Malinois is 6 months old and is reactive to people. She most of the time barks when she sees a stranger. What can I do to help her gain some confidence? Thank you, really need some help. Well, what you can do is, 1, start to train her to do things. So train her in a neutral environment, to sit, to down, to look at you, to give a paw, to whatever it is. Doesn't matter what it is, but give the dog a job to do, because what you're trying to do is you give the dog a job not to do. You're telling her, don't jump, don't be aggressive, don't bite, don't lunge, don't do this, don't do that. But you're never really telling the dog what to do. So I always try to give the dog a job to do. I try to teach that in a distraction-free environment. Sit, down, stay, look, whatever it is, whatever that command might be. And with the advent of so many people getting Malinois, there is a lot of bad breeding. So there's genetically a lot of bad dogs out there that have weak nerves. Now, generally, and I did a podcast yesterday with Avi and a guy who's an expert on dogs and breeding dogs, 50 years. And we talked about that Malinois in general have weaker nerves, sharper nerves than a German Shepherd. So that's very likely to happen. But you need to get the dog under your control. And a 6-month-old dog should not be aggressive to people. You need to really socialize the dog. You need to really train the dog. And I pray that you didn't get a really bad dog. So let's see here. Only looking for questions. And if you guys are chatting amongst yourselves here, what that does, it makes it very hard for me to look through the questions, because I cannot see any question marks. I'm only seeing Kristen with like 200 things in here, and I'm not going to answer those intentionally because there's way too much conversation going here. In fact, at some point here, I'm going to have to get somebody in here to bump you guys out of here. Okay, BD. Hey, Robert, any tips to stop incessant, unnecessary barking? My neighbor has 2 Irish setters that bark for the dumbest reasons. The wind could blow, and they probably bark at that. Bark collars are one of the best things. I use one on Maya all the time. Maya's an incessant barker. So when I'm outside with Goofy training or putting him on the treadmill, or when I've got Maya in the car and I'm outside with Goofy, she has a bark collar on. That bark collar stops her from barking. It stops the crazy behavior because it gives the dog really a nice chance to settle down. And without that permission to settle down, a lot of dogs are going to just keep barking and barking and barking. They work themselves up. They really get themselves into a frenzy. That's really sad for the dog. The dogs get really messed up by that. And people don't want to put a bark collar on them. They just don't. They think it's mean. But what's really mean is letting your dog get so wound up and so worked up and so irritated, because the barking is a frustration bark, and that frustration just gets worse and worse and worse. When the dog sees that that's not acceptable, the dog defaults to a nice, calm behavior. So that's what I would suggest for your neighbor if your neighbor loves the dog. Sawblade K says, thinking on getting a Pomeranian puppy, can it be trained even halfway as good as bigger dogs? In general, little dogs, lap dogs, toy breeds, don't train as well as bigger dogs. And that's not all bigger dogs, but I think what you're referring to is dogs like shepherds. Shepherds, for example, are a very easily trained dog because of their breeding. The genetics of that dog was really developed and harnessed to work with people. The dog cues into people. The Molosser breeds are less likely to do that. They're sentry dogs. They're standing outside. They're guarding. That's what their thing is. So livestock guarding dogs, another one. These breeds are not really made to interact with humans the same way that shepherds are. Now, a lot of people are going to say, oh, my blah, blah, blah is trained better than that, blah, blah, blah. And that's fine. But I'm giving you the genetics, the basic core of what a dog's purpose was and is still today. You can change the breeding. You can find an exception to the rule. But for the most part, you're going to see that a shepherd is going to be easier to breed. But Pomeranian, it's a great dog. Get them. If you really like them, then I would suggest getting one. Hello to all you guys. Hello to Macedonian, Gangster, Emo, Josh, good to see you too. Okay, here's one. Clemens. I have got a 2-year-old mouse. She behaves a lot better when she's on a slip leash or a gentle leader compared to a normal collar. How do I get her to the same mindset when wearing a normal collar? Well, first of all, you don't necessarily need to put her on a normal collar, but normal collars tend to frustrate the dog because they're pushing against it, and it's putting an immense amount of pressure on their neck, and they don't know how to turn it off. Choke collars, they usually understand that when they back off a little bit, it takes the pressure away. If you want to get a dog used to the other collar, you can have the dog wear the flat collar and wear the slip lead on top of it, or above it per se, and use the corrections on the slip lead so the dog gets used to wearing the flat collar. More than likely, you're talking about a flat collar, and then can eventually just be changed into the flat collar. I use slip leads my dog's whole life. Even now, Goofy's 12, almost 12 and a half years old. I got him a special collar that Janet got him. I don't know what it's called, but I can show a picture of it. But it's still somewhat of a martingale collar, and I do like those. Josh says, very grateful for your channel. Any advice in starting a board and train program? Well, if you can do really well with a program like that, what I would suggest to anyone who starts a board and train program is the same thing that I recommend to people who are looking to put their dog in a board and train program. One, obviously you want a very nice, clean facility. More importantly than that, you really want to choose who's in your program. You don't want to overschedule things. The worst thing for me would be to leave my dog in a board and train program where, let's say, there's just way too many people, there are way too many dogs. Then I wouldn't want my dog there. I would charge more, deliver more, and take less people. That would be my biggest advice to you. So, and thank you for your support of the channel. Let's see. Martina. Why isn't it clicking here? By the way, I'm using a new iPad, which I've had forever. It's not a brand new iPad. It's my newest iPad. I'm using it as a sidecar to my Apple MacBook Pro. And it used to kick out all the time. It used to just bump off. So that's why I have a second iPad in case this one kicks off. But if it does, I'll just have to look over and do that really quick. But for now, it's working good. And it's a lot easier for me because it's a much higher resolution iPad, so I can actually see the screen a lot better. And I don't have to wear my glasses. The other one is so tiny. So if this starts working, this is fantastic. I love it. Martina says, hi, Robert. I was wondering, how can I become a dog trainer? Well, the way you become a dog trainer is the way anybody becomes a dog trainer, and that is to start training dogs. First, train your dog. Help some friends with their dogs. Volunteer at a rescue society or a shelter and learn more about dogs. Watch, my channel has tons of dog training videos, and the ones on my channel on robertcabral.com are very detail oriented. So those of you who watch my videos here on YouTube and enjoy those, some of you are members of my site. And again, just a quick plug, I will be doing a live at 10 a.m., which is in 45 minutes from now, on my channel for members only. So that always happens. But the more training you watch, the more experience you have, the more hands-on experience you have, the better trainer you'll be. And just start, help your friends with their dogs, do little tiny sessions and see what you can help them better understand. That's what I would do, really. Bones, or is it Bones? I don't know. My working line German Shepherd is 11 months and has been refusing commands as simple as sit without numerous corrections. He barks, jumps, tries to bite, gets frustrated. 5 to 10 minutes training sessions. What should I do next? Well, first of all, I would do everything through feeding. I would do all your obedience through hand feeding. Every time he wants to eat, he's got to do something. So if he's getting obstinate on you for some reason, I don't know why he would be doing that, but he would. The dog just would only. I have to be careful how I say this because people. Well, I don't care. I'm going to say it anyway. The dog would only eat if he's working. Right, a dog must, and every creature except for a lot of young kids who live in their parents' basement, need to work to actually survive. That's a basic drive that has been existent for thousands of years and has only changed in the last like 2 or 3 years, maybe 10 years, where people actually can survive by not working. They can beg for money or do whatever, but you need to work. You need to work to get something. And the same thing for the dog. The dog needs to work to get something. So if you're asking him for something, lure him into a sit, lure him into a down. Do that for a few weeks, and the dog should change his mind because that's the only time he's going to get to eat. And people who say that that's cruel and all this stuff, I'm sorry, go to another channel. Seriously. I mean, every dog needs to work to get something. And if you can't handle that, then I'm sorry, you're in the wrong place. BD, I'm teaching my Mal to heel while I walk backwards. I've been doing it by luring her with a treat and a wall between her and me. It works at times, but sometimes she'll begin to squat into a sit. And that's totally normal because your hand is too high, right? So keep your hand low. Keep your hand almost where the dog has to look down like this to get the treat, and that'll keep her butt up. And you can also put a little leash on her waist, and then keep popping her up when she does it. But keep the session real short in the beginning because it's a normal behavior that when you're walking backwards, especially with your hand being in this upward position, the dog will tend to normally start to sit down. But that's a fantastic question. Let's see. Again, if you look at the questions I'm answering, they all have a question mark in front of them. So if you don't have a question mark, I'm sorry. I really want to answer all your questions, but we're at 177 people now. So it's impossible for me to get to all of them if a lot of you guys are chatting, asking questions and stuff like that. Hera says, how big is the effect that dog's nutrition has on its mental acuity? I think you mean acuity. Mood, and I think that's what you wrote. I just don't know how to spell it. Which affects its learning and behavior. I think a lot. I think it has an immense effect on a dog because think about if you were just to go eat junk food for weeks on end, your mind is not clear, your body is not clear. What we put into our body. I mean, imagine putting sand in with your gasoline, or watering the gasoline down with sludge or water or anything like that. Your car wouldn't run. So what you feed your dog is imperative. I only ever feed the very, very, very best dog food I can get. So I would think that's a fantastic question there too, Hera. Fantastic question. But please feed your dog the best food you can. And James Bond says, what are the top 3 breeds you would suggest that can do agility training for fun, bonding, hiking, and adventures that can live in an apartment? I'm looking for a great companion. I would say a Labrador or a Golden Retriever would be your best bet. I would even stop at those two. A Labrador or Golden Retriever. That's because they can live in an apartment, they can go hiking, they're good with other dogs, they bond well, they can do agility, and you're saying for fun, you're not looking at a competition. But, Janet just, with Wayne just took a first place at a premier agility trial, which is spectacular. It's really amazing, especially for a lab. That sport is really dominated by border collies, but border collies can be hard to live with. So, I would really say that. Hello from Canada to Linny. Grace. My Mal chases bikes. I tell him to sit, try to say it before he sees the bike, then no, tap, tap, and say no again until he does. Then I walk him in the opposite direction of the bike. Is this correct? Yes, it is. But what I want you to do before you do that is put the dog at a distance from the bicycles, right? Try to get him at a place where he can kind of watch the bicycles and not chase them. That really close proximity is really what's going to be the issue. The closer that bike is to him, the more his drive is going to come up. And it's a very, very natural drive for the dog. So John says how to train a dog not to chew on things he shouldn't be chewing. The only way to do that is to avoid the things that you don't want him to be chewing. Either put them away or put the dog in a crate. You really got to make sure that you do restrict the dog from doing things. The more they get into, especially when they're young dogs, puppy dogs, or new dogs to your house, the more they get into those things, the more likely you are to have problems with them trying to chew them. So try to avoid them. Try to avoid them as much as you can. Juliana, for those of you who are, asking questions and you don't put a question mark in front of it, I can't answer it. All I'm asking you to do is a simple thing. I've answered probably a dozen questions so far, and everybody has a question mark. That's the simple rule. Free questions answered. One simple rule. Juliana says, how can I make my dog more interested in playing and training? She doesn't care about toys or food much or me. Well, one, hand feeding. Don't be around your dog all the time. Put your dog away. Put your dog, in the crate for an hour, and then take the dog out to train. Make training an event. Make it something super fun. Don't let the dog have toys laying around the house. Don't let the dog have as much stimulation on their free time as they will in their engagement time. And that's a really important piece. And I think that's a mistake everybody makes with their dogs. They give them all these toys and all this activity, and they're petting them and playing with them, cuddling with them, and this and that. And then they take them outside and they're suddenly asking them, hey, sit down, do this, do that, do this. And the dog doesn't do it. And why doesn't the dog do it? Because there's no reason to do it. They've gotten all the affection, the food, and the toys for just being themselves. So a dog must work for reward, and then the dog will be a much better, more obedient dog. Tim says, puppy protection training info. Well, I don't teach protection work, so I can't really give you that. I would suggest you look at some people who do protection training. But more importantly than that, I would visit clubs because this is really a tactile, hands-on thing. And protection training is not like obedience training. If you mess up protection training, you really mess up the dog. It's kind of like surgery. You don't want to do it yourself if you don't know what you're doing. So I would try to find a good club that has that's near you, that has a good program that really focuses on a good positive interaction, a good positive experience for the puppy. I would not put a lot of pressure on the puppy. I'm learning a lot about the sport. As I go on. I mean, I've been interested in IPO for 10, 15 years now, and I've done it with my dog. It was really fun, but I just learn more and more every day by the people I talk to and the people I watch and stuff like that. So I would really suggest getting to a club. P. Petkov, thanks for your comment. That's very sweet. Bruno, dog loose lead walks, but walks slightly in front and can begin to lose focus. I constantly do 180 turns and sits. Anything else I can do? No, but I wouldn't also overdo it. If the dog is slightly in front if you're just going for a regular walk, don't be such a dog Nazi on the dog. Don't be the person that, don't be the fun police. Don't be that person. Let the dog walk, let the dog sniff, let the dog have a nice walk and enjoy the walk. Walk more briskly, walk more determined. The dog will follow you more. But unless the dog is really just choking himself on the end of the leash, if the dog is kind of close to you, I mean, you'd be surprised how my dogs walk. I'm sure someday somebody's going to shoot a video of me walking my dogs and say, oh, this is Robert Corral. Look at how he walks his dogs. And I'm proud of it. I want my dogs to go sniff and go enjoy the walk. It's an experience. It's really more of that than just exercise. I don't use walks as exercise. If I do, I put my dogs on the treadmill or do other things. I don't think a walk is enough exercise for a dog. I think it's a good mental stimulation for the dog, but not enough exercise. Lois, good to see you. How concerned do I have to be about hips and joints when exercising my GSD, jumping to catch balls and on gravel surfaces? I'm going to tell you something. That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that, Lois. I would be very concerned about it, especially with a dog like a German Shepherd. Even Goofy, I think I probably overjumped him quite a bit when he was younger. And he's got a little arthritis in his lower back. Again, he's 12 and a half years old. It's to be expected. But be real careful on it. These dogs are not made for jumping, especially jumping up and then coming down on their back legs. It's really not good for them. We really want them to land on their front legs, but we also don't want them landing that much. Think about how often dogs really jump in the wild. They don't. We make them jump. They might jump over a log or something like that, but we're putting them through a lot through the jumps and obedience and agility and all these things. So be really, really, really careful. And I would try to do it on a soft surface. Arash. See, I'm getting more and more questions now. We're up to 178 people, and I can't get to one. So if I don't see a question mark, I don't think it's a question. How about that? That's all I can do. Arash says, is it possible to have a friendly pet to family and relatives, but he always keeps looking for any danger to protect the owner? There are certain breeds, certain guardian breeds that will do that. I think German Shepherds to a degree do that. I think Rottweilers do that to a degree. I think a lot of sentry dogs do that to a degree. They'll get very, very bonded with their family, but they are very, very protective. So anything strange that comes in ends up being, a warning to them, and they become very protective. They'll bark or whatever. So yeah, it depends really on the personality. Just like with a person, it depends on the personality of a person, how they're going to react in certain situations. The same thing is with a dog. The personality of the dog will determine and dictate how they will respond. Don, good to see you here. Are dogs right-handed or left? Because my dog only wants to walk on my right side. Thanks. It's not right pawed or left pawed, I guess is the term you're looking for. But the dog will find a position that they like. Now, unless you keep correcting them to the left side, then the dog will walk on whatever side they're most comfortable on, just like you would do. You get into a chair a certain way, or you cross your arms a certain way. It's not which way you're right-handed or left-handed, but it's just what your habit forms. So again, it doesn't make a difference. Most people walk their dogs on the left side, but if you walk them on the right side, it's not the end of the world. Unless you're going to do competition or something, nobody's going to care. Najnej, I hope that's right. My almost 3-month-old Malinois German Shepherd, when I try to distract him, give him demands, I think he means commands, or stop him from biting and nipping, he will start barking and bite even more. Suggestion. Well, he's a Malinois. He's a Malinois German Shepherd mix, so I don't think he was probably purposely bred. I mean, I hate to say that. Anytime somebody's mixing two breeds together, I think that there's either an accidental breeding or a breeding of somebody who didn't really know much. Some of the Malinois German Shepherd mixes that were done for police work were very, very specific, but those dogs didn't get out in the public much, or they shouldn't have at least. But this is a temperament issue. The dog is obviously very stubborn, but again, the biggest thing I would focus on, it's a 3-month-old dog. Start to be very fair with the dog, be very clear and level-headed with the dog, and I think you can probably change it. But you might have a genetic dog that is just, a certain way genetically, and you probably are not going to change it. So be really conscious of that. Linda, I have an Aussie trying to teach him to walk backwards, and he always goes to a sit. Tried your method, it didn't work. Anything else I can do? Well, if my method didn't work, I don't know any other methods. I'm just thinking, if I gave you my method and that doesn't work, that's the method I know. Now, if you're teaching him to walk backwards and he goes into a sit, my method, it doesn't make him go into a sit because I've taught it to many, many dogs. So you might be doing it incorrectly. That's just a little tip. You might think about that. More than likely, the dog goes into a sit if you're doing it too much or you have your hands too high. You need to put your hands lower. Your hands need to be at the dog's chest level so his head is down and he's walking backwards. That means he can't sit. If his head is down like that, it's almost impossible for him to sit. Let's see. That's Linda Abby. And by the way, you notice all the questions I'm answering have question marks in front of them. So if you're listening to the podcast and you're wondering why your question wasn't answered, or you're looking to ask a question, you'd like to get some information, please put question marks in front of the questions, and I will do my best to get to those questions. And I also will have, I can't answer more than one question. Sometimes I accidentally do it, but if I catch myself, I won't do the question. Sorry. Abby says, I have a 5-month-old female Rhodesian Ridgeback. She is not food or toy motivated at all, if any distraction is present. I tried corrections like pops on a leash, but she won't look my way. The reason for that usually is because the reward, the toy or the treat, is not that valuable to the dog. So she decides to override her less than interest in the toy or the treat, because she's more interested in being dominant and predatorial towards the stimulation. That's it. That's as simple as that. So you need to make a correction present that can override that behavior. Now, a Ridgeback is a hound. It's a very determined dog, very, very determined dog. And if you can't override that, then you got the wrong dog. But you need to be able to override that. And again, like I always say, start with your distractions at a distance and work from there. Any cheap recommendations for frisbees for dog frisbee style? All are so expensive. I'm in the UK. Amazon, please, if possible. I'll tell you one thing. I will never recommend cheap products, because you go get yourself a really cheap frisbee from China or something, or wherever, and the dog chews pieces of it and gets inside his stomach, then you've got a couple $1,000 vet bill. And a couple $1,000 is a lot more than even the most expensive Frisbee in the world. So I would get the most expensive, best Frisbee that's made for dogs. So because they will take that into consideration, that this dog might ingest parts of it, or they'll make it where it's not likely to do that. So don't look to cheap out on that one. And I know I already answered your question. I went to that one because I saw that that's an important one. What's the best lower priced dog food found in Walmart? For example, for a German Shepherd, I'm now using IAMS for large breed. I don't shop at Walmart. I don't use cheap dog food. I started my podcast out today saying that I only feed what's best for my dog. I'll tell you, if you're on a super, super tight budget, one food that I know is going to give you a decent food and it's less expensive than the others is Purina. That you could consider that one, but don't go super cheap on your dog food. I wouldn't do it. That's a big mistake because it's just going to be full of crap like potatoes and filler, and that's something you don't want to give your dog. Kevin, if my dog goes out of the heel position, do I correct right away, or do I give a verbal then correct? Well, first of all, you need to lure the dog and you need to inspire the dog to stay in that position. And when you're first teaching it, you don't correct at all, because if the dog feels he's getting popped in corrections in that position, he's not going to want to go to that position. So the first part is always about motivation, inspiration, and letting the dogs make mistakes. And when he gets out of position, there's no reward. So he should want to get back into the position of reward where you're rewarding him and you're talking to him and you're inspiring him to keep doing the right thing. And then you can go to the next phase, which would be adding a verbal negative and then a correction. Ben Line. Good morning, sir. I'm getting a German Shepherd puppy on Friday of this week. Congratulations. I am concerned because I do not know anyone that has a dog. I would be willing to socialize my dog with. How do I proceed? You're going to need to meet people to socialize your dog with. That's your job. That's your job from now till Friday, to go out and either go to pet stores, go to parks, find people who are walking their dogs that look like nice dogs and ask them, say, I'm going to be getting a dog. Do you mind if my dog could meet your dog? Be careful early on. Young puppies need to have positive experiences. Ask the breeder where you're getting your dog. That's where I would start. Are zoomies a sign of anxiety? No, zoomies are a sign of zoomies. They're a sign of a dog being really excited. Okay, MJ, those aren't question marks. Those are asterisks, but I found it anyway. My German Shepherd is deer reactive. How do I counter deer activity? Zane says hi. Well, you're going to need to get the dog used to it, but you're going to probably, in that situation, you're going to need to use an e-collar, and you're going to need to do some aversion training for the deer, because if the dog runs after the deer, it's going to chase the deer for a long time, and it could get hurt running through the woods. It could be, get caught up with another, wherever, I don't know where you're located, we have deer, but there's mountain lions, there's other predators out there that can get to your dog. So you're going to need to teach your dog a solid stay with you or a solid recall. Really critical. Mary Bowman. I skipped a couple people who I know I answer questions for. Remember, if you're in here, try to get one question that's very meaningful, so it's not just you and me. I'm sorry, I know I hate to say that. It sounds really rude, but I'm not trying to be rude. I want you guys all to enjoy this. What do you recommend best schools for dog trainers? Are any certifications that are worth it? I mean, a certification is basically worth the paper it's printed on. You need to have the knowledge. Knowledge transcends certificates. It really does. I mean, I taught a program at the shelters for years, and everybody got a certificate of completion, which I think is useless. I mean, I really do. I mean, I like giving people certificates if they do something, but it's like when I taught martial arts. You got a black belt and you got a certificate, but the certificate's worth nothing, right? It's your knowledge that's worth something. So I don't know any schools that I would recommend. I really don't. I know Michael Ellis has a school. That's probably a really good school. He's a good trainer, but I can't really recommend any other schools because I don't really think any of them are any good. I don't know of any. Let's see. Jenny. How do you re-socialize a German Shepherd 4-year-old that was in a traumatic situation with humans and other dogs? She's now showing aggression with other dogs. Well, you're going to need to socialize her. Exactly that. Now, I don't really have any recommendations how to do it. I would do it at a distance and safely, but I would certainly try to make every single experience. The thing you guys have to understand is when you expose a dog to something either for the first time or for a revisiting of a situation like aggression or re-socialization, all the experiences have to be good experiences. For example, my dog has for 12 years had good experiences with other dogs. So I can put him in front of another dog, even if that dog's acting like a jerk, and he's not going to respond because he's had all good experiences. But if his first few experiences weren't good, I wouldn't be able to do that. So you must override bad experiences with good experiences and structure, and you need to be there for your dog. Suzanne says, hi, Robert, my dog owes me a lot of money. He has had foundation training, but lunges at drive-by dogs. I correct using a prong and put him in a sit. Is this the correct way to handle this? I mean, I would. I don't know what the foundational training that he had is. Did you send him to somebody or did you do it? I don't understand the question there. But the dog must be corrected. Yeah, he's not allowed to lunge at dogs going by. That's not cool at all. But again, start at a distance. So you have to use less corrections. You don't really want to kind of kibosh the dog in a correction really hard unless you really have to, unless you can't get away with it. But you want to set your dog up for success. So you want the dog to see other dogs at a distance, a somewhat good experience. And if he does kind of lunge, it's going to be less of a lunge than he's going to do if the dog is like 5 feet in front of him. So use distance as your friend. Again, question marks, get your question answered. Hi, Robert. I have a German Shepherd and German Shepherd, Alaskan. It's funny how I read Alaskan when it says Askan. Malamute, Czech Wolf Dog mix. My God. That's a crazy mix. Wolf Dog, Malamute, and German Shepherd. Okay, when I let my German Shepherd and my German Shepherd mix barks and leaps around constantly, how would I curb this? When I let my German Shepherd mix barks, I don't understand your question. I guess one of your dogs leaps and when the other one is out and barks. I mean, you have a dog that's probably genetically not as stable as it should be, especially when you have mixing a Malamute, a Wolf Dog, and a German Shepherd. That's a really disaster of a mix. I'm not saying that he might be a really nice dog, but his head is probably not as clear as it should be. That's just, experience speaking there. I would say you need to get the dog exposed to this thing, this stimulus, whatever it is, and let the dog see that, this is not going to be danger to him. It's not going to threaten him. And the more he can see that, especially at distance, the better it's going to be. Okay, here's another one with an Alaskan Malamute. I've been told by a trainer that I trust that better. You've been told by a trainer you trust that you better get an e-collar to stop her from digging. He says, otherwise it would be very difficult. Do you agree? I wouldn't put an e-collar on a young puppy for digging. That's just my thing. I wouldn't let the dog be in an area where they're going to dig. And if they were going to be in my backyard and I saw them digging, I would put it. I've given this advice 100 times over the years. If you have a puppy that digs, get yourself a little sandbox, fill it up with their favorite toys, bury all their toys. The dog will always dig in that sandbox. There's a lot of really cruel ways to get dogs to stop digging, which I've learned and read and discussed over the years. None of which I would recommend. None. I mean, you got a dog that digs. The reason the dog's digging is because he's bored. That's it. Okay, Lois has another question. We are now having loud thunderstorms in the middle of the night. They totally freak Maggie out. After soothing her, would it be okay to put her bark collar on? I wouldn't put her bark collar on. I mean, because you don't want her freaking out about it. And by the way, my dogs hate thunderstorms and they hate fireworks. And some moron down the street, I mean, like last night was firing off fireworks and Maya was upset about it. But you don't, I would not use an e-collar for it. No, sorry. The provocative bully says, Mr. Carraro, what are some of the mistakes a new mal owner makes that can easily be avoided? Dog parks, no structure, bad experiences like just letting the dog run amok, especially with other dogs, people teasing the dog, lack of structure, really lack of structure is going to be it. But let the dog have fun, but make it, the dog must behave. Quinton says, I have an 11-month-old female German Shepherd. When I go to let her, I guess you mean let her, which spells leather when you don't use a space in there. She has juiced and explodes with high amounts of energy and arousal for a good 10 to 15 minutes. How can I calm this down? Ignore her. put her on a lead when she comes out of the crate, take her outside and just ignore her for a little bit. Ignore her till she calms down, because she's getting worked up. She's using that energy to dispel or to get rid of, to dismiss, to use up, to burn up any other energy she'd be using to be doing something productive, like working or training or luring or shaping. Jess says, what do you suggest for someone wanting to gain decoy experience with a lack of sport clubs around? You can't do it. You know, it's the same thing I would recommend to somebody who wants to drive an Indy car without an Indy car track around. You have to go somewhere where that exists. Look online, find clubs. You know, you gotta go where it is. That's just as simple as that. It's not something you can do yourself. That's what you're asking me. Mary says, recommendations for breed to use for a demo dog for dog trainer. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. It doesn't matter whatsoever. You need to just be able to really control that dog and work that dog. I mean, dogs like Malinois, Border Collies, Sherman Shepherds, those dogs look really good doing what they're doing. They're really fun to train. They're a little bit more work to train. But I'll tell you something, I'd be just as impressed, if not more impressed, with somebody who could do it with a mutt. You know, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's got to just be a good dog. You're welcome for the chats. I love doing the chats, by the way, just so you know. I really love doing the chats, and that's why I do them. But that's why I'm also very strict on them, that I don't want people just coming in and bombarding questions. You know, this person before must have had 20, 30 questions. That's not fair to everybody else, right? You can't just come in and barrage me with questions, and then I can't get to everyone's questions. I'd rather answer one question for everybody than 4 questions for one person. It's not fair. Okay, Pat, you're saying, I have an intact Czechoslovakian wolf dog that's approaching 2 years old. I don't know why you guys get these wolf dogs. I really don't. Must have been Game of Thrones or something that inspired you. But anyway, what's your opinion on neutering large breed working dogs? It's my same opinion on neutering any dog. I don't know why people neuter them. I mean, people, you know, if you can't control the dog, fine. If you're not able to keep an eye on the dog and you think the dog's going to go get another dog pregnant and then those dogs are going to end up in the shelter and be killed, you know, that is, by the way, what happens. There's nobody who's just kind of, irresponsibly breeding dogs like, oh, my dog's intact, and oh, I got my neighbor's dog pregnant, and oh, we found 7 people who really wanted these mixed dogs that nobody knows anything about, that aren't papered or anything. So neutering, you know, if you're going to neuter, you should wait till after 2 years. So you're correct in that. If you're going to neuter the dog, this is the right time to do it. But it's something to really consider. You know, would you neuter your child? Would you neuter your brother or sister? I don't know. That's up to you guys. I'm really always careful on that. Ivani Prado says, when I take my dog out leashless and sees other dogs, I call him to come to me and doesn't obey. Any tips? Ivani, don't take your dog out off leash until you know the dog will come back to you. You need to train that, what's called a recall, before you let your dog off leash. It's just not, it's not responsible for you, for your dog who can get hit by a car, for the other dog who might get bit or barreled over, for a person or a child walking down the street who might get barreled over when your dog is running at them. Don't let your dog off leash until you know the dog has a recall, and a solid recall. You're welcome, Caesar. KP. My 2-year-old Malinois wouldn't go in the water any higher than his chest, even with a life vest. Paws need to touch. How can I teach her how to swim? Well, I mean, if it's really, really important for your dog to swim, first of all, your dog doesn't need a life vest. Most dogs don't need a life vest unless you have a bully or something like that. Malinois and Shepherd is adequate swimmers. You need to take your dog to a pool, carry your dog into the water, and let the dog swim out. That's the way I did it with every dog I've taught how to swim. I just pick them up, I walk into the middle of the pool, I let go, and the dog figures it out. That's super simple. And if you're in a lake doing it, do it the same way. Show them, just point them in the direction of the shore. The Slander Bunny. How do I control a German Shepherd puppy biting? She nips at feet a lot. Thanks. That's totally normal. That's just what they do. So what you need to do is keep the dog, when you're not engaged with them, keep the dog either in a little puppy pen or an X pen, whatever, or a crate. When the dog is out, the dog should be entertained. You should be teaching, doing something with the dog. Luring, shaping, training, walking, playing, something. Because if the dog is idle, the dog is bored, the dog's going to either chew up something in your house or, chew at your feet or your hands, whatever's moving, whatever's interesting to the dog. So limit the dog's freedom when you're not directly engaged with the dog. Mary says best breeds for demo. Okay, I already answered that question for you. Okay, there's a question mark with no question, so that's, I don't know why you did that. That seems kind of foolish, but okay, again, here's a question, Jenny. How do you re-socialize German Shepherd? Okay, I already answered that question. If you ask your question twice, you're going to really get, it's not good because it doesn't help me. Okay, here we go. Linny. Do things like flirt pulls help satisfy prey drive or make the prey drive more intense? Well, it does both. It does both. But I'm not a big person on flirt pulls unless you know what you're doing with them. I've used them quite a bit. But a lot of times they make dogs really crazy if you don't know how to cap the dog's drive and how to control the dog's drive. But they're a valuable tool. Okay, there's a super chat. Thank you, Provocative Bully. Mr. Corral, what are some mistakes new mal owners make that are easily avoidable? I think I answered that for you. But again, I said lack of structure, lack of socialization, and dog parks. Avoid all those, and you'll have a really nice Malinois. Yeah, thanks, Lois. Everybody should hit that like button, that little thumbs up button. That's really nice, but I think you need to exit the room to do it. So almost 200 people in the room. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you're here, we got about another 10 minutes to go on this live chat. I try to do at least 1 or 2 lives a month. I don't do too many because, again, there's too much content out there. You guys need to go out and play with your dogs, train your dogs, do something with your dogs. Don't sit on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram and trying to read about doing stuff with your dogs. Just go do it. If you found this channel, there's tons of content. You don't need to go to any other channels. I mean, you might, but you can take all the content here or go to my member section at robertcabral.com and take that content and do something with it. Go train. Stop sucking up your time just being on social media. Let's see, Michael or Michelle. What do you think about castration? Would you recommend it? Love your channel. You know what? Again, I don't believe it's that important. If your dog is with you all the time, like my dogs are always with me, I don't think it's that important. Anybody who's responsible with their dogs, they keep an eye on the dogs, I don't think it's that important. I think it's important if you bring your dogs to daycare, if you bring your dogs to dog parks, which I don't recommend. If you don't keep an eye on your dog's in a yard, an open yard, then yeah, I would do it. But other than that, I don't know. And if you do it, please at least wait a couple of years. Mr. Jnot, I hope I said that right, or not. I guess maybe the J is silent. I adopted a female working line German Shepherd. She's very submissive, and I'm having a hard time building her confidence. She's very submissive to me, but not to other dogs. Any tips on building her confidence? Try not to be really hard on her. Try to use hand feeding to build her confidence, to be close to you. Lure movements as opposed to asking for movements or telling her movements. Use a neutral voice. Try not to get too excited because that sometimes does a number to the dog. Get on the ground with the dog. Get more at eye level with the dog. That'll build her confidence, or put her up on a table when you're getting her to do stuff. Natalie, how do I train 2 Malinois at the same time? They're 6-month-old sibling. Well, boy, this must be your very, very first time to this chat, because I have told people hundreds of times at least that never to get siblings, never to get dogs of the same age. It's littermate syndrome. Read anything online about littermate syndrome. It'll show you you're not going to be able to train 2 6-month-old Malinois together. It's not possible. My suggestion would be to find somebody who really would love the other dog and separate them out and do some training, or keep them in 2 separate areas, for an hour or 2 before you start training, so that you can have a bond. But training 2 Malinois together ain't gonna happen. And I tell you this over and over: if anybody gets 2 Malinois together, making a huge mistake. Any 2 dogs together. Have I ever considered making DVDs? I hope one day you make a documentary. Well, I mean, if somebody wants to make a documentary about me, I think it'd be pretty boring. But I don't make DVDs because it's so much easier now with digital media, with streaming. Would like to video on making corrections. What is too severe? What is too soft? How to read when timing, etc. Well, I might have something coming out on that really soon. John Villanueva. What's the best, fastest training exercise to tire a German Shepherd out? Nothing. You don't, I mean, just go for a jog with the dog or something. And I mean, I don't know I don't know your dog, but I don't really look at exercise to tire dog. I don't want to make my dogs tired. I want to, I don't want to be tired myself. I want to be energized. I want to keep going. So that's my thing. Kruthin. I lost my 5-year-old Dobie while on a walk in September. The suddenness of her passing is hard to deal with. Any pointers on coming to terms with this? Watch my video here on YouTube, Grieving the Loss of a Pet. Everybody loves that one. I poured my heart out in that one. And I'm sorry for your loss, by the way. Edith, in your experience, which 3 questions must a first-time dog owner be able to answer positively before getting a dog? Well, do you have the time? Are you willing to train for the dog? And will you keep the dog its entire life? That's those just popped in my head. I couldn't even repeat them if I had to. Funny Smile says, hi, Robert, just found your channel. We have an 8-month-old German Shepherd and a blackmouth cur. She eats napkins. How can I teach drop if she doesn't know the command? Well, what you do is you put the dog on a table and you give her something to hold that she can't swallow. You have the same object. You have 2 of them, and you say hold, and they hold it, and you say out and out. And that's the easiest way to do it. Offer the dog a treat. You got to have a really yummy hot dog. When the dog holds it out, they give it, they get a hot dog. That's a real simple way I would do it. Vinny V, how do I get my GSD 3-year-old to stop attacking the vacuum and broom? Oh, man. She also barks when I'm leaving the house. Well, the vacuum and the broom is because it's moving. It's prey drive, totally normal for the dog. What I would suggest to do is put the dog in a crate when you're doing it so that the dog gets used to it for a while, and then it'll probably stop. But it's totally normal for shepherds to do that. My little noodle. Hey, Robert, how much is too much training? In about 1.5 months, I'm getting a Labrador and wonder how much is too much for a Labrador breed. How big is their energy compared to a Malinois? It can be quite a bit. Like Dwayne has a lot of energy. He loves to train. But, I always say 10 to 15 minutes. That's really it. And always put the dog away when they're wanting more. Like never get a dog tired and then put them away because they're burnt out at that point. I always want to put a dog away when they're still wanting to do more and then bring them back out. I like to do multiple short training sessions as opposed to one long one. Got about a couple more questions. Kevin, during these very hot days, what are some good ways to monitor if your dog is getting overheated? Thanks, Robert. Love the channel. One thing is watch the temperature outside yourself, right? Watch your dog, excessive panting, frothing at the mouth, really heavy breathing. When the dog starts to get kind of listless, that's really bad signs. Pale gums are bad signs. Overall, just be super careful in the heat. I know a couple people have lost dogs to heat exhaustion. It's the most devastating thing. You will never, ever forgive yourself for it. So just first of all, don't take the dog out if it's really hot. The dogs need ventilation. They need to be kept cool, like water under let them lay down in a little kiddie pool or in a lake or something like that. Don't let the dog get overheated because dogs overheat very quickly. They sweat out of their paws. They're standing on hot ground. They can't sweat. It's really bad. So yeah, be super careful. That's a fantastic question, Kevin. Thank you for asking that. Hala says, I have a great 5-year-old German Shepherd Mal mix I adopted a year ago. He's great. He said that twice. I believe you. But he is very much into hunting ducks, except for, right? And it flies through the air. How do I stop this completely? Well, you need to teach the dog obedience. You need to teach the dog a solid leave it. You need to work on obedience with the dog. And if he's a really great dog, which I believe you 100% that he is, then you should be able to work obedience. Put the dog on a line. Use either an e-collar or a slip lead. And when the dog is chasing, no, leave it. Come back to me. Rewards. Teach the dog that you control the dog. Not easy on a big dog. There you go, top fan from Kolkata. Nice to see you there. Tanya. Hang on, Tanya, right there. American Bully tries to fence fighting with neighbors' dogs, totally normal. That have avoided him for years. Posturing, tail up, barking. What type of corrections to employ? No issues with other dogs that face him. Well, try to put a privacy divider up. Either put a wall, like a picket fence in that area, or put some of that nylon webbing or the fence stakes that you can put in between to break them away from it. This might be the last question here. Oops, sorry. Compacosful, hello, e-collar is illegal in my country. I have a 1-year-old pitty, and we do a lot of off-leash recall training. Any different off-leash corrections if she doesn't come when asked? Not related to e-collar. I mean, can you use a vibration collar? Right? Can you use a tone collar? Something that's away from you that you can reinforce things with. I mean, a lot of places that don't allow e-collars do allow vibration collars, and you can I mean, you can get the Martin collar, which is you can just turn all the e-collar settings off and just use a plain tone and vibration collar, which I think is a great setting. And then if you're ever somewhere else, you can turn the e-collar settings on and use it as an e-collar. But if you can't do that, then the other thing that I would do is I would use a long line. That's it. That's it. Okay, this will be the last question. Josh, how can I get my Czech wolf dog mix to not hysterically bark and jump around and listen to? I think you asked me that question before. And I already said you got to put obedience on the dog. I'll give somebody else a question. I've never answered a question. I have a shelter mutt, mostly German Shepherd and Australian Shepherd. When playing with other dogs she knows, she often does a lot of mouth licking to other dogs. Is this a problem behavior? You know, I'm going to end on that because I think it's a really good question. It's not a problem behavior unless it is. And what I mean by that is some dogs do it as an affection. Some dogs do it as a dominance, but it's an interaction. In other words, they're forcing themselves onto the other dog. It is somewhat dominant because they're being pushy about it, even if it's in a submissive way. They are engaging the dog that might not want to be engaged. But if the other dogs take it, it's great. I try to stop it personally. I try to control dogs. I like to let dogs see that I'm in control, that I dictate everything that goes on in the interaction between dogs and dogs and dogs and people and me and dogs. I'm completely in control of that. That makes most dogs feel really safe. I think that's a really important component to give to dogs so that they understand that they are safe when I'm around and that they always look back to me for direction and for interaction and instruction on what they should be doing. So I'm going to end on that question. I know there's a ton more. A lot of people came in here and really wasted time. Oh, I'm going to look at this. This is a good one. This is my beautiful wife. I'm glad I got to see that before I clicked off because that would have been not right if I didn't see that. Here, you gave me a super chat. Thank you for the super chat. That's very, very nice. Appreciate those super chats are not necessary. I do appreciate them, but they're not necessary. I'm going to say goodbye. I will be back. I'll probably be back next month. This is actually the end of the month, but August 1st, I will be here. I will have a big announcement, and I hope you'll tune in for that. I hope you'll check out my channel, robertcabral.com, if you've been here this long, for all the best online dog training available anywhere. Also products, any product that I recommend, go to my page, robertcabral.com/shop. You'll see the t-shirts that I sell. Also, you can buy the t-shirts underneath here on YouTube. And the e-collars I recommend, the food I recommend, the training gear I recommend is all available on my site at robertcabral.com. You'll know it's the right product. I don't recommend just going to Amazon or going to a site and ordering things because there's so many scams out there that you might not be getting the right products. All of my products are checked and verified, and they're all products that I use and I love. So there you go, guys. Thanks for being here. I wish you guys a happy rest of your Sunday, wherever you are. I know some places in the world, your Sunday is already over, so I wish you a very happy week. Thank you very much for being here, and I'll see you the next time. Take care.